The Braves maybe should consider leadoff by committee.
This is Locked On Sports Atlanta, and it's time for the Atlanta Baseball Party, only on Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome into the Atlanta Baseball Party, your home for the best Atlanta Braves baseball talk. It's local insight you can't get anywhere but right here at Locked On. I'm your host, Tenitra Batiste. Alongside me are Grant McAuley and Jarvis Davis. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 with any winning $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. And of course, our Atlanta Baseball Party is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As Grant has coined him, Maximum Freed was once again on Tuesday on one in the Atlanta Braves 9-3 win over the Boston Red Sox. We'll talk about Max and also Ozzie Albies getting hot and going deep. And we'll talk a little bit about an odd thing that happened, a hit by pitch that might have taken him out as soon as he came back to the Braves. We'll talk about that as well in the stretch. But first, let's talk a little bit about what the Braves might be doing at the top of the batting order. Grant, in a season where the Atlanta Braves have lost Ronald Acuna Jr. and have had to shake up really the batting order to deal with other injuries as well, does it seem to you like Michael Harris II is maybe starting to settle in and is maybe the best choice of that leadoff spot?
Well, the latter part of that, I think, is kind of, yes, among the people that you have, I feel like he's the guy that makes the most sense. And on the flip side of that, you can use Ozzie Albies there when he's batting right-handed against a lefty. That also could benefit the Braves to have somebody that gets on base at the clip that Ozzie does against lefties. But overall, I think Ozzie profiles a little bit better. If he's not in that two spot, then somewhere in the middle of the order, as we saw against Boston, where he could pop you a 3-run homer and get you ahead in a game that you very much need to win to get your road trip started off right. Now Harris's numbers in the leadoff spot, they're not, looking all together that good. It's got an on-base percentage just under 300. 3, I believe, of his 6 hits since moving to the leadoff spot came in one game. But overall, I think that Michael Harris profiles as the guy that has the speed that can impact the game. He's shown the last couple of years that he is capable of doing a lot more than he's done over the first 2 months of this year. And I think he's just kind of in the same boat that a lot of other guys are. When they get back to their norms, when they get on track, it has a chance to be something special, this entire lineup. Even without Ronald Acuna Jr., there's still a lot of talent there, but that's a huge void to fill. And it's, I think, the expectations, you have to have them guarded a little bit for anybody that steps into that spot.
Yeah, and that makes perfect sense, Jarvis. And I think, too, with what Grant said, it's an experiment that you're just now kind of get rolling. So it's almost like you can't give a grade per se. Maybe it's an incomplete at this point, but he might be one of the more viable options.
Yeah, the first thing that comes to mind, me, I'm always going to try to fit in a football reference at some point, right? About running back by committee. So lead off by committee. I think it kind of works. And, when you talk about what Ozzie's been able to do, I love being able, I know we're going to talk about it a little bit later, but just seeing that pop in his bat, come to fruition and, in that moment, I just feel like that is something to kind of look forward to. And I think Michael is the type of guy that just from a speed standpoint, it just makes sense, right? Him getting on the bases and trying to fill that big old void that, that Ronald Acuna had is leaving, with having that element, because when you're talking about a guy getting on base with a single and then still in second and potentially still in third and, and a pop out, versus actually getting a hit can bring a run in, that makes all the difference in the world, So that effect right there puts a lot of pressure on pitchers, and that gets them to thinking about those things and may be able to give up a 2-run home run or a 3-run home run if multiple guys are on base. So I think that Michael Harris could settle in eventually, but like you said, I think it's a committee thing, at least for in this moment. And like you said, it's kind of incomplete. So we'll just see how it plays out, because both of them are good options in my humble opinion.
And Grant, speaking of by committee, the Braves added some depth off the bench Tuesday, signing veteran Brian Anderson to a major league deal. He, of course, has split time between third base and right field across his career. And of course, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, the Braves, to make room on that 40-man roster, had to transfer Tyler Matzik to the 60-day IL. But right now, talking about Brian Anderson, does that move, Grant, help the Braves maybe not to continue maybe overextending Adam Duvall in right field, and maybe by default also give Jared Kelenic a break in left?
I mean, they could mix him in there. He can play the corner outfield spots. Anderson can. He can also play the corner infield spots. You look at the guys on the corners in the infield, barring an injury, they're not really going to take too many days off. I do think that still the best option is somebody that has the kind of power and run production ability of an Adam Duvall to get more of the at-bats in right field. And obviously, Jared Kelenic benefits from this because it kind of goes back to, I think, what the Braves were expecting, or at least hoping he'd have the opportunity to do this year, and that's get more regular at bats. You want him to face some lefties. You don't want him to just be stuck on the strong side of a platoon for 2, 3, 4 years, and all of a sudden, okay, well, we've decided at 27 or 28, we're finally going to, take the governor off and let him go full speed. I don't feel like that's the way they want to develop Jared Kelenic. But, Brian Anderson and Joey Wendell before this, Luke Williams, some of these other guys that we talked about, David Fletcher, you're pretty much looking at the 25th, 26th man on the roster. It's not necessarily the most exciting move, and the Braves just keep shuffling it out. They believe they found somebody who's had some success at the big leagues, who does have some power and some versatility, and clearly they saw him a lot down in Miami. It always seemed like every series, Brian Anderson was in the middle of something that was, going on for the Marlins or going wrong for the Braves in a particular game. At least it felt that way. I haven't even dove into the numbers yet, but it always seemed like he was in the middle of those things, and sometimes that's the best audition, is the damage that you do against a team might get you a job a little bit later because they're like, hey, we couldn't figure out how to get this guy out. Maybe we can bring him in. He could help us out a little bit. But he was playing AAA ball for the Mariners, didn't make their club out of spring training. So obviously this is not the most exciting move. And certainly, I think it goes without saying, but I'll say it anyway, not the last move that Alex Anthopoulos is going to make to help both the depth and to help this lineup once we get closer to the trade deadline.
Yeah, I think Kelenic is a special case, right? Because we know what he's capable of, or this from a talent standpoint, right? When he being drafted in the first round, like you can't argue against that. So for him, I've just been really intrigued about how he's been able to tweak his stance and everything, because he talked about getting comfortable in the batter's box. He's talking about his shoulders being too tight. And I was just like, man, this is some fascinating stuff. And the adjustment that he made against the Chicago Cubs when Kevin Syso wasn't even there, right? He was away with a family matter, dealing with a family matter. So he was just saying, he was watching on TV. He was like, oh my gosh, I love this. And I was like, when you get into the fine minutia of the techniques and trying to tweak and stuff, and not just in season, I'm just totally fascinated by it. And it just kind of speaks to what Jared Kelenic, like the headspace Kelenic is in right now, because we understand what he went through in Seattle and all that losing, that stuff can pile up, man. So being in a locker room where hey, we're a playoff team. He came out and said that. And I know that means something to him, be able to say that with, and people start looking at him and laughing at him because he's crazy, right? So I think just understanding where he is and potentially getting some opportunities to face some lefties, because that'll be good for him, because he feels like he knows he's an everyday player. He just has to go out there and prove it and get those opportunities. So the more opportunities I feel he gets against lefties, we saw what he did, what he's able to do against the A's, and coming through in a clutch moment, right, to put the Braves ahead. So I think right now, this is, I hate for it to come with a Ronald Acuna injury, but to see Kelenic get more opportunities, I feel like it's going to work out for him in the long run, especially when it comes around October.
Yeah, and a couple of quick things on that. Jared Kelenic is somebody that once he gets going, I think that, if you're riding a hot hand, he might be somebody that fits at leadoff, because he does know how to draw walks, work counts. He's done those things in the minors. It hasn't translated at the big league level yet. And you're absolutely right. And Brian Snitker said this as well. Hate the injury for Ronald Acuna Jr. Underline hate, put it in all caps, highlight it in whatever color you want. Nobody wanted to see that. But now that they have to accept that has happened, you give other guys opportunities to step up and do something special. And that's the way that Brian Snitker kind of categorized it, is we're going to give somebody, or somebodies, plural, the chance to do something special. And maybe Jared Kelnic's one of those guys.
Yeah, you want to talk about somebody doing something special? Max Fried did it on the mound last night, but Ozzie Albies at the plate too. We'll talk about it in Going Deep. This episode of the Atlanta Baseball Party is brought to you by Game Time. Game Time makes getting NBA Finals tickets even faster, and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to the tip-off, which we are closing in on 24 hours away from the start of the NBA Finals, or a little over 24 hours, with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets. Now, they have priority last-minute deals where you can save up to 60% off buying last minute for sports, comedy, concerts, theaters, all of it. Flash deals, save even more with exclusive in-app deals on select seats ahead of the game or event, and zone deals as well, where you can save even more when you choose a section and let Game Time choose the seat. So take the guesswork out of buying those NBA Finals tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Now, terms do apply, but again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL, LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. And remember, your purchase is also covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. So download that Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, Jarvis. So we had a night, and actually Max Fried had a night, and Ozzie Albies had a night. That's why we can talk about having a night where the Braves racked up 8 runs Tuesday to open the series with a win against the Boston Red Sox. And when you look at that, pretty impressive win overall to start quite a lengthy road trip that's going to see the Braves, of course, stopping in Boston, then going to DC, and then dropping down to Baltimore. But with that 8-3 win, it wasn't just another Max Fried masterful outing, but for him, it was a record-setting outing as well. He struck out 13 in the win. That's a career high for him across 7 innings. And then, of course, Ozzie Albies hit the tie-breaking 3-run home run that gave the Braves that win last night. But what was most impressive for you? I'll call him as you call him. Grant calls him Maximum Fried. You call him Contract Max. But was it more impressive to see Contract Max get it done or Ozzie showing off his power at Fenway?
Wow, I would have to go with Contract Max because, I just been in awe of what he's been able to do ever since Spencer Strider went down. We understand, we talked about it ad nauseum on this podcast, and we love talking about it. It's not, a burden, when he got off to that rough start against the Phillies to start the season. So but ever since then, it's just been just putting in work. And then, like you said, to mention the career high in 13 strikeouts, right? We understand Max Fried is not necessarily a strikeout pitcher, a strikeout pitcher like that, but to see him put together, a combination of pitches and just have hitters just so off, and we saw, and you get a little concerned, last night, in that third and fourth. I mean, what's the third and fourth inning when he gave up consecutive back-to-back runs in that innings, and he only gave up 2 earned runs in the overall. It was just like it didn't even happen. He just went on to strike out guys and get right back on track and get back into his mode. So for him to be able to, struggle just a little bit early on and be able to come back and go 7 full innings, like that is the type of stuff that you got to look at and say, man, it's gonna suck if he walks away, in the offseason. But like you said, Spencer Strider going down, he's the ace of the squad, of the staff. You just got to look at it and say, enjoy it for what it is right now.
Yeah, you absolutely do. And I have to agree with you. I think that what Max Fried did last night was the most impressive or the more impressive because, like you said, just the 2 earned runs on 4 hits. He worked 7 innings, and this is the 6th time in the past 8 starts. But check this out, 4 in the last 5. So you're talking 7 innings, 8 innings, of course, the 9 innings, the complete game. Then, but you, of course, had the little, we'll call it a blip on the radar screen where he only had the 4 innings against the Padres a couple weeks ago. But before that, 7 innings. That, to me alone, in this day and age of baseball, is amazing, right? But then when you look at not just the number of innings that he pitched, but what was he doing in those games, like allowing earned runs, just 2, like you said, last night, and just 3 against the Padres in that 3-1 loss a couple weeks ago. But ultimately, 2 of those games, he didn't have any runs earned, and in one of those games, just 1. So it's the consistency for me. So although last night was the record-setting game, it's the consistency of strikeouts. It's the consistency of not allowing batters to get to base on balls, and it's the consistency of not allowing those earned runs to pile up and to reset himself, just like you said, to be able to shake that off and get through 7 innings. That's what the Braves need, because they can't afford to tax that bullpen, especially because, like we'll talk about later, you've now lost Tyler Matzik for at least 60 days. So you need that bullpen to get as much rest and opportunity to just come in short relief as possible. But that said, we know that the Braves have had more than their fair share of struggles at the plate. So I do like Ozzie Albies' 3-run home run as an honorable mention, because that's the kind of thing that the Braves still need in order for this pitching staff to feel like they're getting the run support that they need, and that they're not always kind of battling from behind. And maybe more importantly, the bullpen, because it seems like they kind of need a little bit more lead time than they would normally need in order for them to ensure that there's a closeout and a win. Now, speaking of that, despite that 8-3 win, and you can even go back to the 9-run outing last Saturday.
Let me make a little quick point about Ozzie real quick. So,
Yeah.
so I think this the interesting thing. I kind of had like a little flashback to last season, right? Because you understand that, you know, in the month of May, they averaged what, 3.4 runs, which is absolutely putrid for this from an expectation standpoint for this lineup, right? If you go up and down that lineup and kind of really pick through that thing. But when Max Fried, you know, given up those 3 runs, right? You know, last year we were like, oh, 3 runs, psh, that ain't nothing. they'll come back, and then next thing you know, so Matt Olson hitting the home run, or he's, you know, or Ronald Acuna is going yard and stealing bases, and next thing you know, they right back on top. So that's kind of what it reminded me of last night, especially when Ozzie went yard like that. That is, I was like, man, that is like, I know a lot of people have made it, you know, and I think I'm kind of on that train too, as far as like, man, I might just need to hit right-handed full time, you know, because it looks like it comes easy to him on that side of the plate. So, but yeah, it kind of took me back to last season when like 2-3 runs, what's that, you know, versus this year, like 2-3 runs, shoot, they might be over with in the 4th inning.
That's true. That's so true. So no, that's a great point, because those are the types of things, those little nuggets or those little instances that kind of remind us of what we saw last year. They kind of give encouragement to what we might see again this year. And if you can just be a little bit patient with this team, what have we been saying for the last month and a half? Let's get to Memorial Day as the first mile marker, and then kind of segueing that into June, where these Braves have historically with this team, because I don't like to talk about historically like 10 or 12 years ago, different squad. But with this team, they've historically had strong Junes. So hopefully, maybe this is a little bit of a sneak peek into what we might see, because we know that this is the Braves month where they kind of catch their breath or kind of catch fire, and then we know what happens for them from there. So it's not shocking even to say that they had 9 runs on Saturday, albeit in a loss, and that they had 8 runs last night, because this is kind of what makes you optimism that you shouldn't necessarily be panicky. Maybe still have a little concern about the Braves' struggles at the plate, but maybe not be panicky, because, hey, it's all happened sooner rather than later, and it is consistent with the pattern of play or the pattern of hitting that we've seen in recent years.
Yeah, this is the time of year where that's why you look at guys like Jared Kelenic, like we talked about earlier, because of the hole that's been left at the top of the lineup. You start to see Matt Olson, I think in the last 11 games, he's batting like 288. Like, so that's encouraging. You know, Sean Murphy was able to drive in a run last night. So those are some of the things that you kind of have to take a look at and say, oh, okay, it's June. It's time to get rolling. So I feel like that is very encouraging. Like you said, we're not out of it yet, because we got to see it, you know, see it consistently. Of course, like we've gotten used to Max Fried and doing what he's done. And, you know, I know Chris Sale had a horrible outing last time out, but shoot, he just won an award for the month of May, you know, the best pitcher. So, you know, those guys have been doing it consistently. So we expect that from them. So now that we're getting these little nuggets and getting these little bits and pieces of of what we saw last year and what the norm could look like for this year, that's when you starting to say, okay, all right, now let's see it like 3 or 4 games. Let's get a series going. Let's get a consecutive series going, and hey, let's get a couple weeks going, and hey, the month of June, hey, we're back on track. So yeah, that's where I'm at with it.
Yeah, that's exactly where you want to go, from seeing a game to a series to a road trip to a month of we're back on track. Speaking of back, when we come back, we'll talk about a guy who just got back, and Braves country wants it to stay that way. So stick around for the stretch. This episode of our Atlanta Baseball Party is brought to you by FanDuel. All right, so you know what time it is. It's winner take all time in the NBA and NHL, and FanDuel's giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and more. Now you can visit FanDuel.com/locked on and make every playoff shot count. And let's think about this. We are a little over 24 hours away from the NBA Finals finally starting. It's been forever since we've been able to talk NBA Finals, it seems like, but we're here. And the FanDuel odds are tilting in the direction of the Boston Celtics winning it all over the Dallas Mavericks. Also tilting in the direction of Jason Tatum being named MVP for it, but Luka Doncic right there behind him, along with Jaylen Brown and then Kyrie Irving, as far as those odds go. So you have some opportunities there to bet on who will win it all, opportunities to bet on who will get MVP, and like I said, opportunities to go after player props and more. FanDuel.com/locked on. That's where you make every playoff shot count, because FanDuel is America's #1 sportsbook. In the top of the 9th inning in Tuesday's game against the Red Sox, Sean Murphy was hit by pitch on the inside of his right elbow. Now, he exited the game, but good news is that the initial x-rays were negative, although it looked crazy. I think Max Fried even said it looked like another baseball on his elbow. Now, Murphy's officially listed as day-to-day, and again, initial x-rays negative, but are you concerned by the fact that Murphy left with his right elbow heavily wrapped after he's just now returning from the IL?
Nah, not too much, because I feel like, just, watching him speak after the game, you kind of get the feel that, hey, this was just more so just precautionary. Obviously, based off the reasons that you just mentioned, coming off the, being injured on the first day, opening day or whatever, and then being out for a couple months. So those are some of the things that, you got to make sure that, hey, everything is A-okay. So, and he wasn't even asked, like, or do you see yourself missing any time or going on the aisle? He was like, no. So you heard it from the horse's mouth, like, hey, I don't see myself missing any time. And he said he probably obviously looked a little bit worse than what it actually was. So, and then but watching it last night, you just like, oh my gosh, like, what is that? So but it's good to hear that those x-rays were negative. So I'm just in a space where Sean Murphy is a tough guy, and I don't necessarily see him trying to tough this injury out, because it's not that serious, I don't feel. So yeah, I think that, the level of concern is pretty low on this one.
Indeed. And he seemed to be in good spirits, like you said, very positive after the game. There doesn't seem to be anything but an abundance of caution that we already know the Braves tend to operate in. So yeah, I think this is going to be a situation that's a non-situation, to be honest with you, but something that could be a little bit of a situation for the Braves collectively, but also for Tyler Matzik individually, is the fact that he has now been transferred to the 60-day IL, had already been put on the 15-day IL. And Matzik posted a 9.9 ERA and, of course, produced some concerning metrics over just 11 appearances this season. Of course, the Braves are hoping that he's just going through one of those phases, that he can come back from, Tommy John surgery. Sometimes it just kind of goes up and down, but that'll at least give him an opportunity to rest his arm. But my thought was, man, Tyler Matzik just can't catch a break here. And it's kind of a discouraging situation. I know he's talked at length about how he had to battle through the mental aspect of it, even maybe more so than the physical. And I think for me, Jarvis, that's kind of what concerns me before we talk about where that might send Alex Anthopoulos. That kind of concerns me for him. And I do hope that he's able to get back, because we know how critical and how crucial a part he was in the night shift and the Braves run to the World Series, and what kind of reliever he can be if he has the opportunity to be a viable part of this bullpen.
I mean, unfortunately, as much as I would love for Tyler to come back and be that guy, be the leader of the night shift, right? Because just that run was just magical, specifically for him to be able to go and do what he did. And it's just so sad that we might be looking at the end of that, right? RIP to the night shift because of Tyler, being that guy in those moments, that the Braves could go to in those high leverage situations. So
Yeah.
I just don't see it. I mean, I hope he comes back and is able to be at least a glimpse of what he used to be.
Right.
But I feel like, him being moved into that 60-day IL is just like, hey, he doesn't have an opportunity, even a glimpse of hope of coming back and being healthy. So we're going to go ahead and do this. So I feel like Alex he might be up to something. He might just be up to something by making a move like this. So, and it's just unfortunate that Tyler has to be that guy.
Yeah, it really, really is. And you're right about that. Like, when you look at the depth chart, it kind of made my heart a little bit sad, because it's really just Tyler and AJ, right? Who
Right.
are kind of holdovers from the bullpen from that amazing run. And he, of course, is on the 15-day IL. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see if one, both, or neither of those guys is able to come back and contribute for this Braves team. But like we talked about, that could make for an imminent move from Alex Anthopoulos on the trade market. But do you feel like it will make for a move for Alex Anthopoulos to look for someone else to possibly assist or contribute in that bullpen, or any other positions that might be in play for an immediate move? We know he's going to make a move before the
Right.
trade deadline. We're talking about imminent moves. Do you see any?
Wow. Ooh, that's a good question, because I really feel when you think about this extra wild card spot, like a lot of teams kind of are lying to themselves at this moment, right? Probably, So, and with the Braves essentially, in that wild card run right now, like I feel like if they have the month of June like they've been having, I feel like they can, get start make a run to kind of put some heat on the Philadelphia Phillies. But I feel like Alex Anthopoulos always has the foresight to start thinking about these things, and I'm kind of torn between whether or not he's going to go for a corner outfielder. I've heard George Springer's name being rolled around, but we always know we don't know what Alex is going to do, because that doggone ship that he runs over there is tight. It ain't no leakage, no nothing.
Ever.
They come out beforehand when it comes to Atlanta Braves and trades and stuff like that. So I really feel like, he's definitely working the phones, and I feel like corner outfield, and you could never have too much pitching, whether it be a starter or whether or not and I feel like, Swellenbach, how he does here in a few, I feel like that's going to be something to kind of keep an eye on as well. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and as far as that fifth spot in the rotation, but I feel like that corner outfield, it might be something there. And a guy like George
Yeah.
Springer, who's struggling right now, hey, Alex
Mm-hmm.
might see something and say, hey, he's struggling. Y'all don't want him. Hey, let me go get him. And maybe we can, get him going, or into a platoon situation, or maybe even just slot him in that right field spot and just keep it rolling.
Yeah, and that's kind of where the rumor mill is going, that there may be some complementary pieces that Alex Anthopoulos is looking to add for his outfield, just like you said, to give him even more depth and give him even more platooning opportunities while he kind of figures out how he wants to mix and match, and also kind of watching what's going on. Because, yeah, we absolutely are going to say that what happened with Chris Sale was an aberration. But of course, you do have those people that are concerned, like, oh dear, is he falling back to earth? And what does that mean, especially amidst and considering rather the fact that the fifth spot in the rotation still hasn't been figured out. That's still a question mark. So it'll be interesting to see whether or not any of those things, the Ronald Acuna Jr. Injury that took him out for the season, Spencer Strider injury, that's still a lingering issue for this Braves team. If either of those things, or even the 60-day IL that Tyler Matzik now finds himself on, if any of those things will make Alex Anthopoulos have to make a move sooner rather than later. Thanks for stopping by the Atlanta Baseball Party, your home for the best Atlanta Braves talk. Remember to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, and we're free and available wherever you download your podcasts. We'll see you tomorrow on the Atlanta Sports Party.